Hello, good evening. I'd like to call to order the Historic Architecture Review Board, Lower Makefield Township, August 9th meeting. It's 6:05 and I'd like to get underway with the minutes for the past couple of meetings. If I'm concerned that if we refer to them for asking questions, that they be an approved set that we can vote on at this point. So has everybody had a chance to review the June 14th meeting?
Yes.
Would anybody like to propose a motion that we accept that? I sent in a bunch of typo type of things for that and a couple of clarifications. I believe that may have gone to everybody. Hopefully, and you had a chance to take a look.
Yes, it did.
So I'd like to make a motion to accept the meeting minutes with the annotations provided by Helen Hines.
Second.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and second. Is there any discussion?
No.
Hearing none, so call the vote for that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion is approved unanimously. So let's move to the July meeting minutes. I am hoping that everybody had a chance to look at them. Any questions? You want to have a motion to approve them?
Make a motion to approve the July 2022 Harbor meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, motion by Ms. Stark, approved by, or seconded by Ms. Lechek, and any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. So we can move along to our first order of business, which is Prickett Preserve Barn, tax parcel 2016-4001. And I believe we have 3 members of the design team. Welcome to our meeting for this evening. Oh, 4 members. So could you introduce yourselves just for the record so we know who was here?
Yeah, thank you. This is Steve Harris. I'm the attorney that represents ELU DeLuca Yardley LLC.
Thank you.
I'm Paul Johnson from Barton Partners. I'm the architecture firm that is working on the barn design.
Welcome, Paul.
Jeff Marshall, preservation consultant for DeLuca.
And hi, I'm Joe DeLuca, a partner with DeLuca ELU.
Thank you. If there is new information that you'd like to present, I think we'd like to hear what you've come up with so far. And whoever wants to start, to take it away.
I think, Paul, following the last hearing, the team got together, listened to your, reviewed your comments. I think we've made very positive improvements along the lines of what you intended. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul Johnson, our architect, who, after going through the slides that you've seen for 1,500 times, will get to the meat of the matter.
Thank you. Take it away.
Sure. So the project is the Prickett Preserve Barn at the current Prickett family property, where they currently operate a antique store out of the existing barn. The Pricketts have owned the property since the 60s. They lived in the house, maintained the barn during that time. These are existing photos of the barn showing its current condition on the site. This is an overview of the overall site for the Prickett Preserve area, highlighting the existing house and the existing barn locations that will remain as part of the overall land development. The land development plan shows the existing house and barn surrounded by new proposed retail buildings, a grocer to the north, to plan north, and then plan east, 200 apartment units, 3-story walk-ups with a clubhouse. This is a rendered view of the complete land development plan, just showing the greenery of the overall site. The goal of the land development plan was to create a central public open space within the area between the existing house and the existing barn that could be used for not only the retail, but for the apartments as part of the overall site. This is a close-up view of that existing barn and house area and the park area that will be created in the space between the two. This is a 3D view showing that relation of the house and the barn and the park space within the area between the two. An alternate view of the opposite direction of the barn to the right. This is a more eye-level perspective, just showing the relationship of the barn, which is toward the back, the house to the right, and the retail to the left. This is a further out view showing the relation of the house looking across the park area to the barn. Another view of that park area. For part of the renovation of the barn area, the goal is to add an addition to the existing barn while maintaining the footprint of the existing barn for a future restaurant space. So it's more of a commercial space. The existing barn would be the square area of the plan. The addition would be wrapping the barn to the south and west sides with terraced patios outside of the envelope of the building that connect to the park area. There's an existing second floor of the barn that will be maintained as part of the renovation. Now these, for the committee, these were the previous images that we had shown just for reference, being our preferred option at the last meeting. So we took the comments from the last meeting and I'll just kind of run through them. The main focus was really on that corner piece of the original elevation or the original rendering and how we were handling the relationship of the what we'll call a lantern versus the original barn. So we took the idea of trying to bring in a little bit more of the elements of the barn itself. So bringing in that gable face with the windows, bringing in some of the stonework to create more of a storehouse, smokehouse, separate area that more ties together to the barn than it does to the addition. It still simplifies the idea by keeping it glass to keep that view through the exterior facade, but it makes a connection not just visually by looking through it, but in some of the language of the architecture of the barn. And this is a view more direct. It shows that relation of the barn gable compared to the addition gable. And we decided to keep the roof pitch a little bit lower than the existing barn, just to try to minimize some of the impact of screening the barn. If we went higher, we felt it would have blocked the view to the barn a little bit more. We brought the stone into the corners just to anchor the roof line of the building, and tying in with a stone that would match the existing barn. So that's just another view from the main drive aisle, what you would see if you were coming into the site via vehicle. This is the alternate perspective showing that southern facing wall with the gable towards the back. There were two additional comments that we touched on from the last meeting, and that one was that the original rendering of the ramp area and the stairs to the barn had stone going up to the height of the railing. The comment was to that was really heavy relative to the lightness of the barn. And so we scaled down the height of the stone walls to just where the paving would be for the ramps and the stairs, and then filled in the rest with a matching railing to the patio areas of the barn. So it keeps it more open. Also, the stonework is intended to match the existing stonework of the barn. An additional comment was to address the connection of the barn to the addition in the elevation. So it doesn't really read in this elevation. So we have an alternate perspective, but just for the committee, that the intent of the following slide is to just address how this portion of paneling is connecting to the building. And one of the recommendations was to create some sort of relief in the corner. So we recessed an area between the addition and the barn. So there is still obviously a tie-in to the barn, but visually it creates more of a break between the two materials by setting it back slightly. The alternate side of the barn is glazing. So this one is running straight into the barn, but with it being glazing, we felt that there was enough of a break in the connection of the two elements. Those are the comments from the last meeting, with the main focus being on the lantern, now gable barn area of the corner of the restaurant addition. If the committee has a particular image you'd like me to move to, let me know. I'll flip through and then we can open up the discussion.
Jen, since he ended up with that item about the relief, the setback that you called it, and when you were making that remark the last meeting, as I'm reading in the minutes, do you have any comment about what they've done so far with the presentation tonight?
I do. The relief is successful except at your fascia. That fascia needs to cut back as well.
That wouldn't be a problem.
Well, do you understand why I'm saying that?
It's to create more, let me jump to the other image. You're trying to create a visual break between this corner and that fascia.
Right.
So, okay.
Right. I think that's going to go a long way to achieve that look.
Jen, did you see what I had sent around? I think it was, my email was delivered to everybody, and from what I understood, since I didn't have the emails from our participants here, that perhaps Jim would send it along. I guess he hadn't. So did you see what I kind of drew along the side of one page that I sent along with that? It was an excerpt from the.
I saw your sketch. I
Yeah.
didn't digest it though. So
Okay.
that was for this specific detail described.
Well, it was another way of addressing a break between the roof line and it hitting the barn. The way I was suggesting is that instead of having some kind of flashing detail with the roof line of the flat plane, that you break the whole thing back maybe a foot or even a foot and a half, 2 feet, and have a little glass infill that would allow the sunlight to wash down along the face of the barn. And if you saw it from the outside, you would be able to see the profile of the stone and all that highlighted by a skylight, effectively. So the skylight would be the point of connection, which would then tie into the flat plane of the roof. And the idea would also be perhaps to provide some linear light fixture in there to then be able to shine up at night and create a wash on the face of the upper part of the barn. So that was another alternative to kind of tie in with your idea of breaking it loose and making it a bit more of a standalone. I think the terminology that was used in the minutes was jewel box. Whether it's that or just, a glass enclosure, either
Right.
way, it makes the sense.
Right, right. I agree. I think your solution sounds very elegant.
Anybody have any other commentary before I launch into a few things that I've written down?
Yes, I do, but I am not sure if it's kind of too elaborate now. To that point that Jennifer had about doing that, sort of, I would call it a huge expansion joint between the addition and the old building. I was thinking just carrying that concept further. We have the old historical stone barn, and then we have this glass addition. Have that totally separated, sort of like a very light structure of an industrial character. And the way it would connect, we would watch how that connects to the barn and how that connects to the earth and nature. Connecting to the barn, it could have a reveal, a total reveal. So even in between the two walls, you could have sort of a well kind of effect, which also give the perspective of the stone and the feel of the barn itself. And also this lightness, rather than being stuck in stone, which is really not a very modern or contemporary or light element, would be sitting on a platform. At the beginning, I think the architect was mentioning decking. So I would literally think about decking, platform, a raised light structure, and that can go and embrace the land. And that also, I was at the site looking at that historical tree, and it's a real 100-year-old huge tree. And the way the plants are shown now is way too close, in my opinion, to actually it's even more than a drip line of the tree. They have a sort of a critical zone where the roots are that should not be disturbed with building. And a platform would sort of avoid that, protect the ground, and give that feeling of lightness to the whole element. Then the other point I had was the solar gain. We were talking about extending just 3 feet the canopy, which creates sort of a different kind of look to the design. But why couldn't we extend it more? Extend it, say, sort of creating a gallery that when you don't have sitting there, sitting away, something that the community could walk by, could be sort of an art exhibit or something inviting. It will protect definitely against the sun. So those were my little points here.
I will say that we did come to the locations of the exterior patios by working with the civil engineer and the landscape architect on the project with consideration of the existing tree root system. We did come to the location intentionally with that in mind. So we do feel comfortable with our layout relative to the tree.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because it really is extremely dangerous, and if you damage that root, it's really life-threatening. The tree might live for a few years and then it's gone. So yeah, I feel if you had somebody that was an expert looking at that, then that's fine.
I do want to jump to the solar shading. we did look at perspectives of what the July sun looks like relative to the overhangs. So 3 feet was a good number to achieve an adequate shading for the summer months for the glazing. That's how we landed on 3 feet. I just wanted to establish that wasn't.
Do you
an
have any
arbitrary
studies?
number.
Do you have any studies for the low winter sun and the impact that might have?
So the low winds. Well, there's also you can see it kind of grayed out on the image here, but there's a tree line that also is in that same area that's not being reflected here. We do expect a little bit more solar gain during the winter months, but that's not necessarily a bad thing given the amount of glazing, and getting a little bit of heat from the sun is not a bad thing in the December months.
Perhaps in October, though, and that might be something of a concern. In general, I had, I hope I'm not jumping ahead, Jeff, if you want to have your time to bring up things, please do it now, I guess, because I was about to launch into something having to do with the relationship.
I just had a couple small comments. I do agree with your idea about having that continuous break or glass along the barn roof that can allow light to wash in and up along the front of the barn. And I do agree with Jennifer, how she was saying to set back that fascia on that roof so everything lines up there alongside the door where it meets the barn. That would just be more cohesive with everything going together there. The other concern I have, I'm the actual one that brought up about what you're calling the lantern and trying to get it to look kind of like a smokehouse. To me, looking at that drawing, and don't take offense by this, but it almost looks like a giant aquarium that you'd go into a Chinese restaurant and that's inside with these giant goldfish in it. That to me, that just looks like it's stuck there and it's out of place. Like I said, don't take offense to that. That's just my impression of that. That's what I'm getting for that. I don't see how that works into the plan at all. The roof line's not the same. I just don't see how that works into the whole scheme. It actually, I think, worked in better before than it does now. But
So then option one would be the preferred option.
Well, I was wondering if I might talk to my technical team. Are they still on? Erica? Perhaps Jennifer, that email that I sent out had a couple of attachments, and I think one of them was a kind of a photoshopped redo of the that brick cornered enclosure. Is it something that you can get up onto your shared screen?
Let me try.
Thank you. But my thought was that if that could be something more substantial and not glazed in between stone columns, but actually just a stone veneer enclosure that might allow for more intimate dining that's not out in the public eye, maybe enough for 4 or 5 tables. So bigger than what you have there now, but small enough where it reads as a separate building. And instead of having a peaked roof, I put a shed roof on it, or at least that you consider a shed roof, because in terms of the, that I got a red line showing the shed roof idea. It provides a lower profile that could act as a clear story kind of connection there. And the rest of it would be a little more solid. But the idea that if it's a shed roof, then the stone can go all the way up to the underside of the roof. And it can be, it doesn't have to use the clapboard And I guess of all the parts of the barn that are there now, the clapboard is the most objectionable to me. As a later addition, it really speaks more of the simplicity and utility type of installation that might have happened with the barn. But thanks, Jen. That was that's a big help in terms of explaining it. Hopefully the other members got this. And I'm sorry, I was hoping that Jim would pass this along to your design team, Mr. Johnson.
I do have two follow-up questions or comments with that. If we were to pursue the shed roof, would it be acceptable to tie in the low point and have it actually face towards the west instead of facing towards the north like you have here? So if it actually pitched up towards the patio parked area instead of towards the left, right of the page, now it'd be more up, down, I guess, on that. Trying to orient it.
It's a design element, and you're the designer. I'm trying to come up with things that are
I'm the designer, but I also
with an idea.
I also want to be on the same page with you guys.
Well, the idea was that a clear story light above stone or even glass provides high northern light that kind of is a little softer than the other space, and this more solid thing might help block a little bit of the solar incidents at certain times of the year, and maintain some of the sense of the barn itself. The other thing that I wanted to see if you might have, along with a request that I sent to Jim, that we understand what it is, of the care of the tree, what current, what did I call it? The preservation techniques that you're using, is it fenced now? There's an awful lot of land moving stuff going on, and
Yeah,
sometimes
it is fenced.
Okay,
It has protection,
that's
orange
good.
fencing all the way around, all the tree protection.
thank
is
you.
in
That's
place.
great.
Yeah.
All right. The other thing that I was hoping that you might be able to provide is a kind of a virtual walkthrough, seeing this addition in the eyes of the person who might be walking around at head height, at normal adult head height. I'm seeing these figures that are on the drawings, and it seems to me that they're looking in the windows right at the knee height of the people who be sitting at the tables. So, that relationship is a little kind of another one of those things about that glass that's on the south side that kind of disturbs me. But if we saw that and the quality of the roof and what that would look like from a person's normal eye height, and looking up at the barn, and what would be a visual clue as to how this relates to the barn. So is that something that I know in my computer I have that availability? I'm just wondering, Mr. Johnson, if that's something that is a standard process that your company has.
It is something we can provide, yes. I will say, relative to, just to circle back to the corner element with the more stone, and if we were going to add any kind of additional stone or some kind of blocking to screen someone's eyes from the table height, it does start to conflict with the openness that we've been trying to maintain of the addition, using the barn as the backdrop. With the more solid walls we introduce to this, the less of that impact that we maintain. And that's really how we ended up where we did, understanding that there is a relationship with someone's eye versus table level, but maintaining it just to keep that openness. If we start going that other route, I fear that we really be taking away from that concept. I'm not
Well-
saying that we're opposed to it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that it's conflicting to previous
Well,
discussions that we've had.
Hey,
I'm
Jeff,
thinking that the three-dimensional virtual model would be something where you can test just what impact this might make. I think the majority of the traffic that comes in the main lane is going to be looking at the north side of the barn, and the relationship of that corner thing would be obviously separated from the barn by the glass box that is the major part of the enclosure.
I will say that our renderings are all taken from an eye level, just set further back from the building. So I believe what you're asking for is something more close to the building.
Well, where those guys are standing.
Yeah. Okay. So one of their perspectives. Understood.
So Steve, could I
It would be
interject?
nice. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just thinking about we're talking about modesty here because we're looking at people's hemlines and stuff like that. Two ways we handle it with glass partitions is you can handle it with Meko shades that roll up from the bottom up, so you can adjust the height depending on where the sun's coming in and the lighting interior versus lighting exterior. The other way to handle it is to put a film on the glass, maybe from finished floor level up 30 inches or so, whatever you need. And that way you've got a little opaqueness going on without having impacts of changing materials. It's still all glass, light can pass through it, but images behind that film are blurred. Just food for thought. Okay.
I'm glad you bring up glass treatment, Jen, because I was going to mention my other major concern, and which has kind of bothered me from the beginning, is the addition that was a late arrival. I'm not sure of the date. I don't think I ever got a date. It certainly wasn't in the minutes as to when that was installed. I got the impression it was around the 1930s, that the clapboard enclosure of that shed roof that's attached on the north side. It seemed to me that, and a lot of the problems that we are having now with the juxtaposition of parking and people right there next to that opening could really be solved by having the south side of the barn go all the way down to the ground and having a grade level access to back in there. And that's one place where you could put these explanation type of tablets or exhibits, and maybe even develop a whole thing about farming in Lower Makefield that you could leave behind as part of your legacy about barns, and why you were trying to maintain this 3-story barn, which is kind of unique. And then the whole south wall could be in an areaway that would step down from the street and have potential for maybe even stadium type seating for 2 or 3 rows that would allow for presentations in that area. So kind of making the public space wrap around the barn instead of having the side that's that people are eating and facing a row of parked cars, because that glass goes both ways. You can see in, but you can also see out, and what's in front of you is the nose ends of a bunch of cars. Might not be the best, but I was thinking that a bunch of the more mundane parts of the party that would be the entranceway, the coat room, the bathrooms that are now put into the main barn, which I read in the minutes you wanted to keep as kind of open and not impacting that with the attributes of the restaurant. But then the exterior of it, if you extend it, instead of having clapboard, you could have a glass enclosure that would be lined like clapboard. So it would be a recapitulation of the clapboard idea, and wrapping parts of this, the utility spaces of the restaurant in the area that's on the north side now, that would probably help a lot, because it's basically plaza type of space now, and it could easily be used as functional space as part of the restaurant, and leave the other side so that we can actually see two walls of the barn go right down to the ground. And I'm thinking that, 2 out of 4, it's not so bad. Sorry to be so long-winded.
I do think there's a little bit of difficulty with removing program from the south side and inserting it to the front. One is that we do want to maintain that north side as an entry point, whether it be secondary or main, just because it does have that connection to the house area and to the park space. The idea is of though it is a later addition of maintaining the clapboard, was to maintain that connection between the two. And programmatically, we're kind of restricted on as we talked in previous meetings, to the western and southern sides, just based on the land development plans and where the drive aisles needed to be. And we can't really expand the western face of the building anymore, because that starts putting us in danger of getting closer to that tree area. If we were to simply remove the southern end, I think we start to lose some of the functionality of the commercial space, because it's really minimizing the usable square footage for the future restaurant space. So there's a lot of tiers to it that by shifting it around, it creates hardships. Yeah.
But as I was saying, I have long found this to be one of the major concerns that I have with the way that this is laid out. I'm not sure which came first, the chicken or the egg, that is, in terms of a land development plan, but it would have been helpful to have talked a little bit about this quite a while ago, and maybe seen the potential value of it. But covering up parts of the building and then saying, well, we're going to put a glass wall so you can actually see it, is kind of like, why put it there at all if you have the potential for seeing the barn in the round? The whole idea of making this so that we can have the right kind of drainage and do the parking the way we want it is, it's kind of beyond our pay grade here. We're trying to address the issue of maintaining the look of a barn that has been deemed to be historic, and we are trying to do that in a way that allows for public appreciation of it. And I guess those are the reasons why I'm making the suggestions now, because at this point there seem to be so many concerns that are taken care of by, let's call it, adaptation of an existing plan. I'm seeing this as we're struggling, and this should be something that I'm asking you as the architect, as a designer, to tell me what it is about what you are doing that's enhancing, that's highlighting and calling into very strong visibility the actual value of the barn as a historic treasure that we are trying to maintain. It shouldn't be like, well, we're trying to minimize the impact. It should be, what are we doing to maximize the look of that barn? And I'm not seeing that happening right now. But
Steve, do you want to take this, or you want me to just give Steve a little bit of? I think the barn really hasn't been seen by anybody for how many years, with all the trees and everything that have surrounded that property.
Yeah.
Yes or no? I mean, the barn. So I think we're doing, a lot to preserve the barn and pay homage to its roots. As Paul was talking about, the connectivity between the house and the barn, having the open space there, a lot of thought was given to make this barn the gem And I think of some things in the surrounding area. I think this will look a lot better than La Stalla, a lot better than Rocco's, Yardley Inn. There are lots of places that are historic. And Jeff, you might have a couple more off of the, on the list. But I mean, personally, I think Barton has done a really good job, and Paul Johnson himself, in leading the charge and saying, how can we make this barn feel part of the community where really nobody has gotten to see it in years, maybe decades, unless you drove down the driveway. And there is the land development. Unfortunately, you can't do one without the other. There's a give and take in that process. And now we have to come up with a good solution, which I think we're at, which the comments from the last meeting, we wanted to give you option 1 and 2, and with a little further refinement, whether it's fascia, setbacks, connectivity, those types of things. We took down the massing of the stone walls coming in, to the building. So again, I hope that we reached a point where, listening to the comments, realizing that, we have to make it functional so it's successful too for the end user programmatically. Paul spoke about the spacing and, the different things. So I hope, it was our hope tonight to come to the conclusion to say option 1 or option 2, maybe with a few more tweaks, but we're there.
Well, I have a very strong opinion in one direction. I think it would be valuable to have the other members of our board offer up their input and as to how they think we are going to achieve what you're saying, to make this a valuable part of the community experience. And I understand the things that you've done are supportive of responding to the criticisms, like the removing the stone wall. And I think what was done there was a very practical and very reasonable solution. So I'm just here. Let me stop talking, and I'll
do the same.
Members of the board.
I tend to agree with Steve with his different ideas he had, and with Jennifer with setbacks on the reveals, I'll call it, on the fascias and this, and I really like the idea that Steve came up with, the rendering of the part, the square part that you're calling the lantern. I think that would look better than just that glass pod in the corner with the shed roof on it. Other than that, I like how you remove the stone from inside the entranceway. I think that all looks good. I think everything else is probably playing in pretty good.
Well, check the box for the railing modification. That's successful. Half check the box for the detachment of the new structure to the barn. And I think you understand how you need to take that a little bit further to really make it work. And I also would love you to explore the other side where the glass meets the barn. I know you can pull that away as well. Same treatment with the fascia, and truly make it look like a box coming against a connector that then joins to the barn. I think it was a miss with the lantern turning into a gabled roof with the multiple materials. I actually would prefer you stay with something similar to what you showed initially. I like the shed roof idea better though. And if it's all contemporary, I'm fine with that. Or if it's more toward leaning what Steve showed you as an alternative, I think that's more successful than your option 2. Thank you.
Anything from Luba?
Still thinking here. Yeah, I'm not sure 100%, about what's
Well,
happening in
why
that
don't you keep
corner.
on putting together your thoughts, and let me just add one thing about the actual roof structure. In dealing with that section that I sent along to the people on Harb earlier today, I was looking at the actual thickness of the roof and thinking that looks like, and Paul, you might actually set me straight as to actually how thick that was. It looks like it's about 16 inches thick.
So, yeah, that's roughly where we are. Yeah.
So I was thinking that if the top bar of the glass enclosure could be like about 6 to 8 inches thick, and then the actual overhang could be reduced at the outer edge. So the fascia could be something of an 8-inch thick thing. So it would basically, again, reduce the look of that plane that's up there to make it a bit more delicate. And then whatever structure has to happen, how happens within that 6-inch or so header height of the glass that wraps around. And if you need that extra space for mechanicals or for hanging ceiling materials or something like that, that's one of the ways, to make the transition. A lot of, commercial buildings kind of do that as well as a lot of residential buildings for sure. When they have the extension of the eaves or the gable ends, they normally make that a lot thinner than the actual thickness of the roof structure. So, Luba, have I given you enough time?
Well, I still like the way the connection between the new building and the barn. I like the idea of having that a piece of glass between the two, sort of as a huge expansion joint, contraction joint. Also, what you just mentioned about having that area well at least in the one side of the building, it will give that depth of the building. We could see it going down, creating that well. I think that would be on the east side. I think there is room for that. So, that would be something that would preserve a little bit of that character, the height of the barn. The corner, I'm not really sure about what's going on there with the corner. I think I like, if it's all contemporary and light, keep that way. Or if it's going to have something heavier, have a reason for that. Is that sort of a memory, a remembrance of an old historical, smaller element that was there and was just brought up as a remembrance and tied together with the glass, or just leave it all glass, the way it was on the first element. But having something like a little, the barn is the mother, and then this is like the grandchild, in that corner. I don't really go for that so much. And also what I mentioned before, I don't know if this makes any difference, would be having all that stone mimicking at the base of the addition, mimicking the barn. I really don't see the reason for that at all. We do not want to mimic, in my opinion, the barn. We want to keep it pure, clean, simple, and light, in my opinion, which is sort of what I think the architect was there just about like 90%. And to have the steps being also like floating steps going up. So it creates that lightning. And even the whole addition could have that floating.
That seems
effect.
very consistent with what's been proposed and what we've been talking to as a goal. So I know that the Luca and partners here are looking for an approval that will go along and basically take care of everything in, well, throughout the rest of the project. You won't have to come back to us, but I am very loath to say that we would want to give up the ability, as we have for a number of other projects just lately, to look at the working drawings and approve them when the time comes. We seem to be moving in the right direction, and I'm hoping with that kind of consideration that you can come back and say, okay, here's what we've done, and here's how it's achieved your goals, and make a convincing argument that'll have us all saying, yeah, that sounds like it's the way we want to go. And then you can finish your working drawings, and we'll have the last look of approval. Because I still don't know what's on the inside. It looked to me like an enclosure for a kitchen area that is certainly going to be in the way of looking at whatever stone type of barn facade that's in back of that. And the other corner, or the other wall facing west, has looked to me like a bar. And I don't know how the back bar would be handled, but it seems to me like most people want to put their liquor selections up on that. So really, do we have the view of all of what's happening inside as well? So those kind of things need to be addressed, I'm very sure. And I was certainly hoping that Dan Grenier would be here to add his understanding of how, as one of the members of the Board of Supervisors, he would like to proceed with your requests in the last meeting, which is basically to give you the go-ahead and then to say farewell, do a good job, because I don't think that I am prepared to do that personally.
Oh, but if I may,
Sure.
Interrupt.
Sure, Steve.
What we're asking for is a recommendation for a certificate of appropriateness for the proposal. The problem, with saying, okay, we want to see all the design drawings and all that kind of stuff is, you're talking about, and I'm sure that Paul will be, and his firm will be very kind to my clients, but nonetheless, you're talking about a significant amount of money to design these things without having any comfort level that what will be designed will be acceptable. So that the point of asking for a recommendation for a certificate of appropriateness is then we go to the Board of Supervisors, where Dan will be, and the Board of Supervisors will look at this, will look at your recommendation and decide whether or not to grant a certificate of appropriateness. If it's granted, then going ahead and spending the considerable sum that's needed to put together the drawings that you're asking for makes sense. But you're hard pressed to say, let's design all of this stuff without knowing whether ultimately it's going to be approved.
Jen, would you be kind enough to kind of review what's been happening with the old Edgewood Tavern project, the barn there, and how we've approached that? And I think it seems like a success story. So we're members of the community, and we want to see positive development, and that's why we're here. So we're putting our information out in front of you in hopes that you can make some positive use of it. So Jen, would you kind of review what we've been doing with those guys as an example of our goodwill?
Well, nobody's criticizing your goodwill.
Jen?
Yeah, I'm torn here. We come from an architectural background. We know what fees are. We know what effort is. I feel like if we could see some sketches, doesn't have to be these wonderful renderings and a full-blown, add-on, just so that we could understand how you're going to handle this lantern piece. I feel like that's the real outlier here. I think that the development of the way the building progressed and the way you've worked through the inside with your prospective leaser, all that stuff is done. There's nothing we can comment on about that. But I would really love to see, in a general way, where this is headed. And then it would be much more palatable to say that we could give you a recommendation that we felt comfortable having the Board of Supervisors look at and say, okay, what the heck were they thinking? Or I can see where it's headed.
I interject for just one moment. I apologize. It's just my question with the lantern specifically. Is Paul has made comments that his main initiative or effort has been to keep it very light, airy, and visible. What I'm hearing is other people saying it should look more like a shed, which by its nature is not light, airy, and visible. So if the group can, the HARB can say which of those two directions, rather than taking two parallel courses, that's at least a step, because that seems, as you said, Jen, that's an issue, and it can't go both ways. And as I said, Paul has really focused on making it light and airy, and if the group HARB wants to look more like barn-like or attached to a barn, shed-like with a shed roof, and it's and a different material, it's going to block that view. And just Paul's very talented, but he needs a direction. What is the highest priority? Because you can't have it both ways.
I voted for glass. I liked the first image better than option 2, definitely. But it's the form. If it's a shed roof, it's a flat roof. I wanted a contemporary abutment to the barn. I don't think that's successful material wise. Maybe it is form wise. Think of the Betsy Ross house down in Philadelphia that's just a frame.
And again, the thought is, we've had internal conversations, and Paul put that up, and we said, let's show an alternative, which we think goes down the path we were led to believe. And I believe Paul and others would say this is the one they prefer to begin with. They've gone through the exercise of showing other options, and they're not coming up with something that's successful that meets everybody's goals. So going back to the original concept is good and bad, because that's what they had come up with the parameters they were working under. And it's good to know that we've all gone through an analysis and see that perhaps was the best option.
Steve, you're muted.
Let me ask for a consensus to kind of resolve this. Looks to me like a 2-2 decision in a way, but I don't know. I'd like to see you investigate a little further, a la what I put up there as a potential. I'll be happy to send that to whoever should be the person to receive that, so that you can look at it at your leisure. It's now part of the record. It probably should also be included as part of the minutes, and we'll have to figure out how to do that. The other members of the board, you want to chime in with whether you think that Jen's going in the right direction, or that something that's a little different to hold down that corner would be appropriate. You all know my idea, so I won't bother reiterating. Jeff, Laura?
I kind of like the way Jen was going. I mean, I'm looking at that rendering now, the option 1, I guess we're calling that option 1. Possibly with a shed roof on that, as opposed to just that flat piece just stuck there. Is that what you were thinking, Jen?
Yeah, I would love to see a form study with the glass and some kind of a roof line. Maybe this flat one is appropriate, but it's too heavy.
Right. I think that's what it is. It's just the whole sight line there along that roof line is too heavy.
I think a virtual presentation would be appropriate, where we could actually say, okay, let's move in this direction and look at this point. And having something to say, well, yeah, that really does block or not. So your input would be helpful, Paul. Luba?
Paul, quick question. If looking at that picture now, option one, with a shed roof on it, the same line as the barn, would look to me like it would open it up even more. You would actually see more of the barn than just that flat roof in front of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, that perspective changes depending on, where you're viewing that from. From the drive aisle, it might block more if it's higher at a higher pitch. I think there's a couple moments of when that happens and how it would be perceived.
All right, can I ask if there are any people who are connected with us online, Erica?
Yes, we have one person online for public comment. Helen, I'll bring her in right now. Helen's in the room with us now. Helen, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you. Hi, guys.
Hello.
This is Helen Hines, basically speaking as part of the Historic Commission, but also my own opinion. Having listened to several of this going around between CARB members, etc., and looking at it myself and being aware of what this barn looked like when I went in to look at the furniture that was offered by the Pricketts and what's happening to it now. I remember our site visit with Mr. DeLuca, and we were assured that the barn would not be touched. And now I'm finding that it's all going to be infilled to the level of an entire story underground. And I'm just really appalled that that's not what we expected of a 3-story stone barn in Lower Makefield by the Historic Commission. I mean, this structure is an old established barn. I don't think there's another 3-story barn, maybe the one at Grey Nun that's in terrible condition, but that's about the only other one in Lower Makefield. And to kind of treat it like this is just really distressing to me. As Jeff knows, a lot of the additions could certainly be worked with. Personally, I don't really like the clapboard either on the stone barn. And, that obviously the roof was probably different originally. I'm sure Jeff would have more to say about that. But I do like using the exterior. I'm appalled that they're using basically the barn for bathrooms. How does that represent our beautiful old stone barn? It's ridiculous. I just think there could be more creativity here, using the cutaway section, maybe putting seating. I like the idea of different platform type seating, certainly handicapped accessible seating. There could be so much more done with this site, and I'm just a little shocked that this seems to be all that we're considering. With that, I'll stop, but be aware that there are a lot of other people I see checked into this meeting watching this, and I think there'll be a lot of pushback if it's not done well. Thank you.
Oh, Stephen, you're muted.
You're muted, Steve.
Okay, sorry about that, fat fingers. I guess I was thanking Dr. Hines happily that that's over with. And I'm hoping that there is an opportunity to present again, and you will show us a couple of things that I asked Jim to request. And one of them was a cross section, and the other is that virtual reality type of walkthrough that would give us a sense of what's going on, even if it's a prepackaged one, but one that shows relationship of the grades and the height of the people outside looking in, and what you're going to do to take care of Jen's concern about the idea of looking at somebody's knees, etc. So a cross-section that shows the connections of how this actually goes into the barn would be very helpful, even if it's just a sketch. So unless I hear a motion that we can move on with approving this, I would say that we've done what we can to help out tonight.
I would say we're actually still a little unclear on option 1 or option 2. I don't know that we have a consensus between the committee members.
I think something needs to be done with that, what you're calling the raised section. Something I think needs to be done to allow for better view of the barn, and at the very least.
I got the impression that and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, that the majority of the board liked the glass, but there was concern about the roof treatment, and that whether the roof treatment was too thick, whether the roof treatment should be a shed or some other configuration, that generally the openness of the glass area was preferred. That was the message I got. Perhaps I'm mistaken, but that's what I understood, despite your suggestion that it would be all enclosed.
It was just my viewpoint. You heard the other members. I would assume that we can move along with further adaptations and clarifications, and we can see you in September, and hopefully at that point have some means of moving along. I'd like to have Jim Majewski's input as to what he sees the process being as well.
Well, that I can comment on. I mean, the process is that you, at some point, you have to vote to either approve or deny, or you either have to recommend or not recommend the certificate of appropriateness, and then the board's got to act on it.
Absolutely, sooner or later.
Sooner, we hope.
Yes, we do too. We do too. We'd like to see this process move on.
Thank you. Well, thank you for your input.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So on our agenda, we have to talk about the barn at, I guess I keep wanting to call it the Miller property, even though now it's been moved along. Do we have a presenter from there, Erica?
Yes, Rich is in the room with us now.
Thank you, Rich.
Different project.
So did you state your name and who you're with and the project, and we'll start with identification.
I hold the space bar, right?
You are speaking and we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. This is Richard Van Horn with 1700 Yardley Langhorne Road, with the proposal on moving our handicap ramp.
Oh, so this is the Dogwood
Yes, sir.
skate shop. I'm sorry, I got the wrong, I wasn't looking at my agenda. Richard, welcome. I hope you're well.
Thank you.
So your plan shows an addition, and you can explain how that works and what you're trying to accomplish, and what the impact on the, especially on the street facade, will be.
So the ramp is out front, as you guys remember currently, and we are bringing it around back from the right-hand side if you're facing the front of the building. And that's where the ramp will come in to meet the building. And it'll be a 12 by 12 area for the store, and it'll accommodate the ramp at an appropriate ADA. You have the plans in front of you.
Yeah, I got the wrong one out a minute ago. Let me get that. Yes, you have, it's a big shed addition on the back at this point that you're proposing?
Yes, it's a 12 by 12 area that the ramp comes into.
Does that have any impact on the street facade?
No, sir.
And you won't see the ramp anymore, what you're saying?
Yes, yes. That's correct. That's correct. You will not see the ramp anymore.
Have you checked whether that's okay with the zoning? Usually they want the ramp to be, the handicap access to be visible and, not really kind of shoved out of the way.
Yeah, it's the entrance to the store in the back. It will be visible as to where the handicap parking will be right there on the right side of the building as well.
I just shared my screen with the plans.
There, yeah, there it is.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a number of sheds that are attached to the house. This is just one more of the traditional way of handling additions up against a higher than usual center section. So materials, roofing, do you have anything further to add with your proposal here?
The roofing will be matched. The siding will be matched.
The roofing says EPDM rubber roofing.
Yeah, I guess he's not using shingles.
Yeah.
He's using rubber now.
That's maybe.
Nobody said it was underneath the shingles. I don't think so. That can be changed if the pitch allows it.
It should show. Chad told me it's matching shingles. Yeah. It's not showing matching singles.
Not on the addition.
Yeah, I'm sorry if that's not corrected right on there, but yeah, that was the plan, to use the same shingles that were approved in the on the main part of the building.
Well, if we have a 1.5 in 12 pitch, those shingles won't be authorized by your shingle company, or any kind of warranty would be available on that kind of installation.
Yeah, I think that's why you had to change it.
So you're saying that that roof that they propose to use is not going to be accepted?
No. Since it's in the back and it's not going to be visible from the street, I'm sure we give some consideration to the fact that we are trying to make the whole system work better. And I'm not saying that the members won't vote as this is a reasonable resolution to the addition back there. The fact is that many of that kind of additions that were installed, many of them had black rubber roof or black bituminous roofing, roll roofing, and that was the standard way of handling it. And I don't think it's without precedent, and it certainly is in keeping with the historic nature of the village, at least from my point of view. I'd like to hear what the other members have to say.
So all the other old houses with the roll roof, you're saying it's not keeping up, but there's many houses with roll roofs, with shed roofs.
So I'm saying that that's a positive thing. The fact that there's so many other instances. Jeff, would you have something to say?
You're gonna have to do something, like you're saying, because shingles, it's not enough pitch for shingle roof. So when they originally called out for the shingle, that's why you changed it to rubber. So, I mean, rubber or even a metal roof.
Yeah, metal roof would be nice as well. What would you prefer?
I'd probably like to see a standing seam metal roof, not a corrugated roof, but a standing seam metal roof on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a standing seam. Yep.
Right, but that's just my opinion.
Right.
Certainly at greater expense, you have to understand.
We understand.
Okay. Luba, any input there?
Well, it's a matter really of economics. The standing roof is more expensive than the roll roof. And also, like you mentioned, this is in the back. So we really, HARP is just basically concerned with the appearance of the home in the front.
Right.
Right.
So the rubber roofing, the EPDM that he's calling out for, it's probably gonna be fine because it is in the back.
Okay. Yeah, I see that on there now too. Yep.
Yeah, I have
Okay.
a question. Do we really need to approve this? I don't think this is part of our call
Well, the
here.
site is going to be available for visual impact coming down Yardley Langhorne Road. I believe that it's appropriate. They've come in. I would be happy if someone would offer a motion to approve or recommend approval and a certificate of appropriateness from the supervisors. Do I have that motion?
I'd like to recommend that this be offered as recommendation for certificate of appropriateness. The form, the scale, the massing, it's all in conformance. I think that it's an elegant solution to a tricky problem. All you need to do is provide a sign indicating where your handicapped spot is and then where the entrance is located. I think this works well.
Well said.
Thank you. A lot of thought.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Anything you would like to add, folks?
There are 5 people in the waiting room.
Thank you. There was a lot of thought that went into this and preparation.
Okay. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to call question and on the motion that we offer our recommendation that this be accepted and approved by the supervisors as for a certificate of appropriateness. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So it's unanimous positive vote. So we'll send this information along to Jim Majewski. He'll notify you when this comes before Board of Supervisors. And if you'd like to attend that meeting, you can do so. In the meantime, we certainly wish you luck with your project. It's, I would ask that the railing that was installed that is really not consistent with the other railings be removed and either replaced with something that is similar or otherwise dealt with. I think since it's only 2 feet above the ground, you probably don't even need a railing there. If you take away the step that's outside the door that was there for the handicap ramp to land at in order to have a roll-in door landing. If that gets removed, it's certainly not more than 2 feet above the ground, and you don't have to have a railing. So if you can, that's been one of the things that has been discussed, is not exactly in keeping with the original program, but it's not something that we have to include as part of this discussion tonight.
Yeah, we don't really like it either, and that will be removed as well with the project.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so I guess our business tonight is done. Appreciate your participation in the process and your fine presentation. Certainly give kudos to your designer, who is obviously careful of what you're doing. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Have a
Good
good
night.
evening. Thank you. Talk to you soon.
So, Erica, our last presenter.
They're joining us now.
Thank you. So good evening.
Good
We're
evening.
glad to have you and to see the progress you're moving along with the plans. If you could identify yourself.
I'm Joel Petty. We're presenting for Milestone Behavioral Health, the renovations to the barn that we proposed at the last meeting, with mostly some note changes and some investigation on whether we could salvage enough siding for the front renovation of this to maintain that as the existing siding, which we are, it looks like, more than able to do. So the approach with it at this moment is to keep the front facade as renovated with the original siding refurbished and switching to hardy plank, board, and batten on the other 3 sides past the front corner boards. But most of the rest of the presentation that we're proposing is going to remain as proposed at the last meeting, with just a little more development and moving into what is just, again, the bay arrangement of the existing building, and the front recess, maintaining that void that is there now with basically just an open barn face, and trying to keep the idea of that shadow line there, replacing the existing kind of weathered garage door on the service bay side of that barn, which is also now kind of our service bay side of the building. It's going to be where the circulation and the bathroom kind of utility areas happen, keeping that main space there open, office area, but infilling that void with the entry system that maintains the shadow line of the face of that existing aesthetic, basically, is the approach. And then what we are able to do in replacing the windows with new true divided light windows, and then adding those to the rear of the building as well. But basically that front facade is going to maintain the look of the existing structure of the building. So that's how we're noting this at the moment, and then keeping that recess shadow there with the infill of the kind of black storefront. But most of that is what was presented at the last meeting.
Thank you. Any comments from our board members?
I think they're moving all in the right direction.
Jen, anything?
I have no comments. This is exactly what I would like to see, how this barn moves into the 21st century.
Luba?
Yeah, looking good, looking great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd certainly like to commend you on your response. Your working with us has been exceptionally seamless, and the advice, I think, has been utilized for the purposes that we hope that it make elegant sense and utility as well. And I thank you for bringing this before us. If we could, if we haven't, I thought we had voted for a recommendation of a certificate of appropriateness.
We did
Do you
not.
recall?
No, we did not. We were hoping
You
to.
did not.
do that, yes.
Okay. So I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the plans as presented for a certificate of appropriateness.
Second that.
Second?
Okay. Let's give that second to a little bit. So, Jen, seconded by Luba. Thank you. And if we have any discussion, any persons on the phone, Erica? about
There's no
this?
public comment.
Thank you. And if there's no further discussion among ourselves, I'd like to call a question. So all those in favor of sending to the board a recommendation for certificate of appropriateness signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it looks like unanimous ayes. And I have to say, we really appreciate your response to us and response to the process. And thanks for stepping up and helping to make this a really nice project.
Thank you very much. Everybody have a good night.
Thank you. Good night to you. So again, I'll ask for a motion to table discussion of further, because it's already 7:30. We were going to talk again, if we had time, about the report to Patterson Farm. And I don't think we have really a good time to do that tonight. So a motion to table.
Second? Well, who's motioning again?
Okay.
Jennifer, you good at that?
Make a motion to table the discussion. Because I haven't.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And now a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Without objection, we adjourned at 6:34.
7:34.
7:34. Jeez. Time
Are
just
you
flies.
outside, Jennifer? Are you outside?
No.
Your hair is
Just-
blowing.
Oh, I have the ceiling fan on helicopter because it's hot in here.
Wow, it's very realistic.
Well, thanks for all your participation, and I know it's a tricky thing with crickets, but I think we've addressed some of the issues that I've been concerned about. I hope that they respond. We'll see, I guess. You know, I'm loath to say that we're just going to say, well, here's a blank check. We like the pictures and it's approved for a certificate of appropriateness, but I'd like to see what Jim has to say about that and what Dan has to say as well. So maybe we can address that at the next meeting. Good night, everybody.
Aye.
And-
Good night, thank you.
The heat's supposed to break, so